The great flood is decreed, let the water ring, but none shall go wide. None shall escape my mind. Ye tremble, glance the wall.
What if the gods of the ancient world weren't myths at all? What if, buried beneath 4,000 years of dust and silence, there were actual records, written in clay, pressed by human hands, describing beings who came from the sky, shaped the earth, and decided the fate of humanity? Those records exist, they've been translated, they've been studied, and what they actually say is far stranger and far more disturbing than anything you've been told. Welcome to Mythic Origins. Today, we go back to the very beginning. Not to Greece, not to Egypt, but to ancient Mesopotamia, to a land between two rivers where some of the oldest writing on earth was pressed into wet clay tablets thousands of years before the Bible was composed. There, a civilization called Sumer recorded stories of beings they called the Anunnaki, powerful, immortal, commanding. Beings who, according to these texts, literally created human beings. For most of modern history, these texts were dismissed as mythology, primitive, people explaining the world around them through stories of gods. But as scholars have translated more and more of these tablets, a question keeps surfacing, one that serious historians, archaeologists, and researchers continue to wrestle with. What if these stories aren't pure fiction? What if they're distorted memories of something real? Tonight, we go to the source. Not to YouTube theories, not to best-selling pop history books, to the ancient texts themselves, and to what they actually say. To understand the Anunnaki, you have to understand the world they supposedly inhabited. The Sumerians believed that before human civilization existed, before cities, before kings, before agriculture, the earth was already occupied. Not by humans, but by the Anunnaki. In Sumerian, the word Anunnaki roughly translates to those of noble blood, or those who came from heaven to earth. Different tablets give slightly different readings, but the meaning is consistent. These were beings of divine origin, superior in nature, who descended from the sky realm called An. The Anunnaki were not one being. They were many, a council of powerful divine figures ranked in a celestial hierarchy. At the top sat Anu, the sky god and their father. Below him stood his sons, Enlil, god of wind and storms, who governed the earth, and Enki, god of wisdom and water, who governed the deep. These three formed the supreme ruling trinity of the Anunnaki, and according to the Sumerian texts, particularly a cycle of poems called the Atrahasis epic, dating back to at least 1700 BCE, the Anunnaki had a serious problem. They were exhausted. Here is where the story becomes unexpectedly human. The ancient texts describe a divine class system. The greater Anunnaki, the powerful ruling gods, had assigned a lower class of divine beings called the Igigi to do the physical labor of the world, digging canals, farming the land, maintaining the cosmic order through endless toil. But the Igigi eventually revolted. The Atrahasis epic describes it clearly. The lesser gods burned their tools. They surrounded Enlil's great house in the middle of the night, shouting in protest. They refused to work, and the ruling Anunnaki faced a crisis. The labor of the world had to continue. The canals had to be dug. The earth had to be managed. It was Enki, the cleverest of the Anunnaki, the god of wisdom, who proposed the solution. Create a new kind of being, a lesser creature capable of labor, shaped from clay, but animated by something divine. Create a human. What the Atrahasis epic describes next is one of the oldest creation stories in recorded history, and it reads nothing like a fairy tale, Enki. And a mother goddess named Ninhursag mixed clay with the flesh and blood of a slain god. They shaped it. They breathed life into it. And from that act, they produced the first human being, called Lulu in Sumerian, meaning the mixed one. The mixed one, part earth, part something else, created specifically to bear the burden that the lesser gods refused to carry. In the ancient Sumerian worldview, humanity was not a gift. Humanity was a solution to a labor problem. But here is where the story turns darker. As the human population grew, and according to the texts, it grew quickly, the Anunnaki began to disagree about what to do with them. Enki, the creator, seems to have felt something like fondness for his creation. He gave humans knowledge. He taught them crafts and language. In several texts, Enki is described almost as a protector of humanity, bending divine rules to help them survive. Enlil felt differently. The noise, the chaos, the sheer number of humans multiplying across the earth. The Atrahasis epic says, and this is a direct reading from the tablets, that Enlil was disturbed by the noise humanity made, that it kept him from sleeping, and so Enlil, the most powerful of the ruling Anunnaki, decided that humanity needed to be controlled, or eliminated. He sent plagues first, then drought, then famine. Each time Enki quietly warned a chosen human, in some texts named Atrahasis, in others echoed later as the figure we know as Noah, and helped them survive. And then Enlil called for the Great Flood. The parallels to the biblical flood are not coincidence. Scholars widely acknowledge that the Sumerian flood narrative predates the book of Genesis by at least 1,000 years. The same arc, divine anger, one righteous man, a boat, survival, a new beginning, appears in both. But in the Sumerian version, the flood wasn't divine justice. It was a god, tired of the noise, trying to erase what another god had created. Now, here is the part of this story that modern retellings almost always skip. The Anunnaki of the ancient texts are not the benevolent creators that some modern theories portray them as. They are not heroes. They are not saviors. In the Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki are capricious, self-interested, and divided. They argue with each other. They deceive each other. They make decisions about human life and death based on personal convenience. Enlil nearly wiped out humanity, not because of human sin, but because humans were too loud. When the flood finally ended, and Enlil saw that humans had survived thanks to Enki's interference, the texts describe him as furious, not relieved, not moved. Furious that his plan had failed. Even after the flood, the Anunnaki struck a new compromise, not out of compassion, but out of practicality. They would allow humanity to continue, but human lifespan would be shortened. Previously in Sumerian, king lists, another real ancient document, early rulers are listed as having reigned for tens of thousands of years. After the flood, reigns dropped to merely hundreds, then dozens. This wasn't mercy. According to the texts, it was management. The ancient Sumerians did not worship the Anunnaki because they loved them. They worshipped them because they feared them. Because in their worldview, these beings controlled everything: weather, harvest, disease, death. To ignore them was to invite destruction. There's something haunting about that. A civilization building temples and offering prayers not in joy, but in the desperate hope of being overlooked. Now, let's be honest about where the line is between what the texts say and what modern theories add. In the late 20th century, a writer named Zechariah Sitchin proposed that the Anunnaki were literal extraterrestrials from a planet called Nibiru, who came to Earth to mine gold and genetically engineered modern humans from earlier hominids. His book sold millions of copies. His ideas are all over the internet, but mainstream scholars, including Assyriologists and Sumerian language experts who have dedicated their careers to these texts, largely reject Sitchin's interpretations. They point out that his translations contain significant errors and that his conclusions go far beyond what the texts actually support. The actual cuneiform tablets, the real ones held in museums from London to Baghdad, describe the Anunnaki as powerful divine beings within a mythological framework. The creation of humans from clay and divine blood is clearly presented as mythological narrative, consistent with how ancient peoples across the world explained their origins. What is genuinely remarkable, and what doesn't need embellishment, is how early these stories appear. The core Anunnaki myths predate most of the world's major religious texts. themes that billions of people consider sacred, creation, the flood, divine punishment, a chosen survivor, can be traced back to Sumerian clay tablets thousands of years older. That is not fringe theory. That is documented history. And it raises a question that serious scholars continue to explore. How did these stories spread? Did ideas travel along ancient trade routes? Were there shared cultural memories reaching back to even older, unknown civilizations? We don't know. And that uncertainty, that open door, is exactly where the mystery lives. Sumer eventually fell. Its cities crumbled, the rivers shifted. The tablets were buried under sand and silence for thousands of years, but the stories didn't die. They moved, carried by traders, migrants, conquering armies and wandering storytellers, into Babylon, into Assyria, into Canaan, into the texts of the Hebrew Bible, into the mythology of Greece, into the sacred writings that still shape the beliefs of billions of people today. The Anunnaki's names changed, their shapes changed. But the patterns they left behind are everywhere. The God who created humanity from clay and breath, the divine being who brought forbidden knowledge, the catastrophic flood sent by an angry sky deity, the one righteous man chosen to survive and rebuild. These are not coincidences of the human imagination. These are echoes, ancient, persistent, and traveling across millennia in the only vessels humanity had, stories. What the ancient Sumerians recorded in clay was their truth, their explanation for why the world is hard, why the gods seem indifferent, why humans labor and suffer and die, and perhaps what unsettles us most, looking back across 4,000 years, is how recognizable that feeling still is. The Anunnaki were never proven to be real, but the fear that inspired them, the sense that powerful forces shaped human fate without human consent, that has never gone away. Maybe that's the real origin of the Anunnaki. Not in the stars, not on another planet, but in the very human terror of being small in a world that doesn't explain itself. The tablets are still being translated. There are still texts buried under earth in the Middle East that no modern eye has read. We don't yet know what they say. But somewhere out there, pressed into clay by hands that turned to dust long ago, someone left us a message. We're still trying to read it. If you want more stories from humanity's forgotten past, subscribe to Mythic Origins. Every week, we go back to where the records end and the mystery begins.